Right now, we come to a very important chapter, very rarely quoted by speakers, and it is on that's the general. I read the chapter, and I think the chapter is really very important for prescriptions for generals. Now, what does Sun Tzu say? All right, one of the key things is that Sun Tzu developed a taxonomy of the grounds. He advocates, right, a way of thinking that if it's this ground, then you should do this. And he made that very clear for the general. For example, he said, you have been encircled. You are constricted by space, where the few may strike the many. Like Sun Tzu says that in those situations, you must devise stratagems. And you're in triangulated grounds. What should you do? You should, that meaning say that you are triangulated, you're enclosed on three sides by three states, on the side by the states. Then the first to control one gains support. Now befriend your neighbors. First, be the first to control one gains support. So you must control this ground. Once you control this ground, then you can begin to befriend your neighbors. Now, grounds that are inside the enemy's territory. What did Sun Tzu prescribe? Sun Tzu prescribed that if you are at the frontier, just inside the enemy's territory, imagine your army going just on the border, then march on, do not stop on the border. This is a very important point. Why? Because when the army just crosses into enemy territory, some of the men make a jittery, and they may try to run away from the army, fearful of being inside the enemy's territory. Now, if the army is to be serious, the army should be deep into the enemy's territory. Then you may gather the plunder, the plunder. Difficult grounds. When the army traverses impossible terrain like swamp and marshes and rivers, wet places, and in these places, Sun Tzu says you must keep on going, never camp. For these places are filled with mosquitoes too. And then you find that Sun Tzu says that, right, the general must try implement disruptive strategies where you make it impossible for the enemy, the army, the front and rear, to combine or collaborate, nor reinforce one another. Disruptive strategy is what Sun Tzu recommends. If armies gather, they are to be thrown into disorder. The whole idea is that you want to disrupt the enemy in their processes of gathering a force together. Now, the general concentrates upon what is advantageous, and counting what is disadvantageous, he pauses. And Sun Tzu emphasizes the general must always emphasize speed to surprise. Speed is the essence of war. The idea is to catch enemy unprepared, take the unexpected route, take the enemy unprepared. Now, Sun Tzu, if you want the enemy to conform to your wishes, what does Sun Tzu say? Sun Tzu says, he seizes what the enemy so cherishes, so that the enemy will conform to his wishes. Now, Sun Tzu also mentioned about the fact that, right, coordination. He will ensure that in training that the enemy, if they're fighting against the enemy, that his army behave like a snake. When you strike the tail, the head attack, the men hating each other, yet they will cooperate. Why? Because they are in the same boat. During a storm, this is what happens, right? Like the right hand helping the left hand. A very important point. And Sun Tzu used the metaphor, the analogy of a boat in a storm, where people sitting in the same boat would cooperate with each other in order to survive the storm. And Sun Tzu, this is a point that was stated earlier, hinted at earlier. Now here is Sun Tzu really make it emphatic about this, that when you penetrate deep into hostile grounds, right, then your enemy, your army would stay united, so that no enemy can overwhelm them. Because by invading deeply, there is cohesion among the soldiers. If your men are too shallow in the enemy territory, then your men may well disperse and run away from battle. Now, Sun Tzu also emphasized the general is one who, a good general, is the one who nourishes his men. He nurtures their spirit. He conserves their strength. And he plunders the enemy so that he may feed his men fully. Desperados. Here is what Sun Tzu says, that the day the army moves, the tears roll down the faces of the men, soaking their garments. The officers seek no excess wealth, but there's no disdain of money. Men do not expect long life, nor want of longevity. Yet there's no escape. See how bravely they fight. Right? So Sun Tzu says that ensuring that, right, when the army moves, that the army stays together, that there's no means for escaping from fighting, then they would be transformed. Sun Tzu, this is one thing emphatic about Sun Tzu. And you know, Chinese tend to be a bit on the superstitious side. Yet Sun Tzu, at that age, 2,500 years ago, tells you, cast aside all superstition, all the rumors, so none flees, even when they face death. Sun Tzu emphasized, be secretive. Let the men confront death. Draw up plans that are unfathomable. You cannot see through, that nobody can read the plan and guess what is the plan about. Put army into face of death, and where there is no escape, they will flee not, they will fear not, even of dying. Then there is nothing this man cannot achieve. So Sun Tzu believed that in facing the possibility of death, his men will be transformed. Human beings will be transformed to the point that they will fight to the death. Troops, when they are bound together with no possibility of escape, these men turn immortally courageous. So vigilant they will become. Now, turn the thing a bit more to a higher tone, a higher level, higher pitch. The great conqueror. Who is the great conqueror? He is one upon crossing the river, he will burn the boats, he will smash the ports, he will throw the men into desperate situation. Victory, or they die. Oh, seeing how, and then you will see how mightily the man could fight. That is a prescription that Si Chu Pa Wang, all right, actually applied in fighting against the Qing Shi Huang army. Bravery of the man will shine through the general. He will be inscrutable. He climbs to a height, then he kicks off the ladder. Right? Ever so calm, he is just. Always in control, he keeps secret his plans. So these are attributes of the general. Right? I'll say this again. Inscrutable. He climbs to a height, then kicks off the ladder. Meaning there's no going down now. There's no return now. You'll fight on. And the general, whether he attacks or defends, depends on the situation. He motivates different soldiers, differently. And there is a contingency style approach in leadership, depending on the type of soldiers. Then on different grounds, different strategies, contingency approach. Again, frontier, the army is kept together. Open defenses are strengthened. On grounds that are focal, alliances are sealed. And when the grounds are difficult, the march is quickened and encircled to focus on access. When the grounds are desperate, fight or die. Now, Sun Tzu mentioned also who is not fit to be a general. Not just who the great conqueror, but also the guy who is not fit at all to be wearing those 4 stars and 3 stars. He is the person who knows not the plans of nearby states. So Sun Tzu expects the general to know what the neighbors are thinking about. He knows not why alliances are made. So this state A and B are combining together. Why? So Sun Tzu expects you to know all this in detail. He knows not the advantages of the ground. Yet he uses not the guys. So Sun Tzu expect a general to know the specific, the details, what's happening, and if it's not, to employ and use the right people, all right, especially the guides, to guide him along. Now Sun Tzu mentioned the hegemonic king, those great kings of the past, of ancient China. When the king attacks, his enemy cannot concentrate their forces. In attacking, the king overawes the nearby states so that nobody dares to form alliances with the enemy. Such is the great hegemonic king. You see, Sun Tzu use the method of contrast and compare and contrast. Then you have the great general. In rewarding, he disregards custom. He put aside all the custom. I'm going to reward, I will reward. And giving orders, he disregards precedent. He doesn't care what's happened before. And the army does act like one man under the control of the great general, because he's one guy who dares to lead and who dares to make decisions. The great general, who is the great general? Verging on defeat, he regains victory. How? He puts the army into desperation. Either they survive or be in deep peril. That's the great general, turning defeat into victory. Now, what the enemy values, he grabs fast. He does not wait to fix battle dates. Now, those in the old days, Zhou period, right? They used to fix battle dates before fighting a war. And this great general does not do that. He acts on the situation. The great general is ingenious in his pretenses. Closely he follows the enemy. And the moment there's a loophole, there is opportunity, there and then he refocuses on the enemy and he wins. So the great general, he overawes the enemy, taking cities so the enemy's state may be overthrown. So he captures cities and overthrowing the enemy's state. And this is something which I like, which I use, often. That is, shy as a maiden, yet you give him an opportunity, an opening, and you'll see how swift as a hare he grabs the opportunity. He is thus one no enemy may match. The great general, when it's time to attack, he closes all the passes, withdraws all the passes, all the permissions. Then he convenes the temple council in order to act fast. Right, we have come to an end to scroll 11.